Good afternoon and hello, everyone. My name is Rich Longo of Flycast Partners, and I'd like to thank you for joining us for our discussion today on the future of IT ops in a DevOps world. Today, I am joined by Cash of OpsRamp and Bobby of Flycast Partners. There are our panelists. They're the panelists for today's discussion. A little background on both. I have Cash as a Senior Product Director at OpsRamp, and he's a Senior Director of Product Management for Event Management, AI Ops, and DevOps with well over 18 years of experience in the IT space. He has worked at BMC, HPE, and most recently at VC-backed fintech startup. Cash is responsible for OpsRamp's DevOps initiatives, as well as initiatives related to IT infrastructure management, next generation incident management, and other key platform areas. Now, Bobby, most of you know Bobby. He's done quite a few webinars for us over the last few years since he's been with Flycast. He's got well over 2 decades of helping to sell, implement, support a variety of solutions, including IT service management, operations management, and financial management, including everything with budgeting and forecasting, allocating and rebill and accounts receivable, utilization management, IT asset management, infrastructure management, change management, incident management, expense management, and integration, as well as HR, CRM, accounts receivable, accounts payable, AD, data warehouse, and IT operations analytics. Whew, that's a lot. He has configured demonstration systems using JSON file ingestion through application API and Python, and has added value in multiple product engagements, providing overall solution views and clarity. His extensive experience in lean methodologies and a proven record of designing and implementing more efficient and cost-effective procedures and technologies, and he's invaluable. Before we get started, Cash and Bobby, I want to introduce a little bit about Flycast Partners. Flycast Partners is here to deliver that seriously amazing IT experience. We're founded and staffed by personnel that take the best ideas from all the collective experiences throughout their many years in the IT space and add the best components necessary to grow and become a leading value-added reseller in the North American IT market. We offer best-in-class implementation services and training in IT service management, IT asset management, IT operations management, enterprise service management, and workload automation spaces using ITIL best practices. Our professional services organization can easily scale up or down to meet the IT needs of any customer, regardless of your size, complexity, or budgetary restrictions. We offer implementation services both on-site and remote, as well as training to reinforce your organization's long-term IT success. Our ongoing remote administration support service offerings will enable your organization to focus on those normal day-to-day operations, saving you both precious time and money. I encourage you to feel free to call us at 844-FLYCAST, that's 844-359-2278, or visit us on our website. There's a plethora of information that you can see on our website, one of being our upcoming webinar schedules and data sheets and white papers and tool offerings and service offerings, as well as you can chat with one of our IT experts Monday through Friday during normal business hours. I encourage you folks to ask questions during today's presentation. Type those questions in the Q&A section of this WebEx, and I'll ask them on your behalf live during today's webinar. Now, Cash and Bobby, let's go ahead and start this discussion out. We have quite a few folks that have joined in. It looks like we've got a lot more that are trying to get in here, but let's start it out. Let's level set for the audience on how you define DevOps, since it seems to have taken on a life of its own. What does DevOps mean to each of you, and how would you define it?
Thank you, Rich.
That would work. There you go. You're good.
That's great. So DevOps, is at least to me, it's not just a set of roles in an organization or some sort of single methodology like Agile or Scrum, but it's actually a culture that tries to foster cooperative product building across traditional silos like development, IT, security, and so on. And it has roots in lean manufacturing, techniques that were used by Toyota back in the 70s and 80s. Cars that were, that they could just build cars faster and orders of magnitude faster and with lower defect rates than manufacturers like GM and Ford. And we all know how that story turned out. So in the late 2000s, about, I would say 2008, 2009, in Silicon Valley, in startups and some certain nimble companies were using cloud infrastructure to bring very quick product updates to their customers. Essentially adapted lean manufacturing techniques to bring this approach to IT. And since then, the term DevOps and those practices have caught fire. So, you know, for for if I were to kind of net it out, I would say for me, DevOps really means is culture and a set of practices that uses continuous organizational learning and collaboration to minimize the time it takes to design a product change and put it into production reliably and with high quality without hopefully any wasted effort.
So, but before DevOps, IT infrastructure really was built for stability and predictability. There really wasn't anything about it that was lean or agile, and those were sort of concepts that were like Cash was saying, concepts that were storming the business and IT world in the mid to late 2000s. Excuse me. DevOps is often confused with agile, while DevOps is a more agile way of delivering IT. It's only that in the classic sense of the term. Both are really meant to bridge communication gaps, but the difference is in which gap they're going to bridge. Agile bridges the gap between the developer and the customer or user, while DevOps bridges the gap between internal developers and IT operations. And it's really a culture that provides better continuous delivery of features and functions that end user customers need and want, driving satisfaction.
Excellent. Well, how does DevOps relate with IT infrastructure management?
I mean, so let me see if I can answer that. I mean, to me, successful DevOps implies that both development, engineering, and IT essentially build and operate products together from inception to production. So you cannot have a situation like as Bobby was implying before, where developers were they would go off, write code, throw it over to IT, and they would just deploy into production. So at which point, kind of developers just ride off in the sunset. There's nothing agile about that. There's nothing collaborative about that. So IT infrastructure, at least in the DevOps world, is a key stakeholder at the product design stage, since requirements related to security, capacity, optimization, even triage and troubleshooting, pretty much anything related to product operations as well as security must be built into the product from the get-go instead of patched into it while it's already in production. And unfortunately, in many enterprises today, the reality is that developers still build code and then just throw it over to throw it to operations, and then they have to figure out how to put it in production and just from there. And then DevOps kind of says, let's not do that. Let's collaborate from the get-go and have processes which can help us with that. The other aspect to this is monitoring and incident management. So typically, IT has been tasked with this responsibility. But in the DevOps world, you cannot have these month-long testing and staging cycles. Essentially, have to troubleshoot in production, and therefore there's this shared responsibility with IT. IT and developers are responsible for making sure that when something goes down, if there's an outage, then both can troubleshoot it, both can triage it, both can roll out a bug fix or hard fix quickly, get things back in production. So this is still, I think, an evolving landscape, like exactly where IT and DevOps can work together. But developers, still think in terms of an app-centric mindset. They think in terms of, oh, my app crashed in production, or too many users are hitting my app, so it's overloaded. While often IT infrastructure folks often think in terms of assets or perhaps even up to the container, while they leave it to the engineers as to what goes inside the container. In a way, I think DevOps and IT infrastructure have this opportunity to challenge the status quo and the siloed approach by collaborating earlier.
Yeah, I just want to add that infrastructure management really is a critical building block for achieving a DevOps method. Programmers and QA testers have to have access to on-demand development and test environments that mirror their production environments. And being able to do that really requires some level of automation, and that's key to being able to roll this out.
Okay, so now let's talk about the things that an enterprise should be doing today to prepare for this shift to DevOps mindset. Yeah, this is a pretty major deal in the market today, in the way IT operates today. We know it's not an overnight shift. but instead it's a progression. So what would you recommend are the stages of that progression?
Well, the first thing is going to be communicate. Let me jump in, Cash. The first thing is going to be communications. In the past, organizations, and Cash was alluding to it, organizations spent mounds of money on war rooms. And really, that's just a way for you to bring your most tenured and skilled employees together so they can all spend some time pointing their fingers at each other. The biggest change is going to be continuous communication from development through deployment and avoiding those war rooms and finger pointing. Cash?
Yeah, I was going to say that, pretty much everything really that ITOps does today is going to be impacted by DevOps because, I mean, if the business objective is to be an order of magnitude more agile than before, then pretty much everything has to change. And the reason why, the business objective, is to be more agile and orders of magnitude more agile is because essentially the same situation that was faced by American car manufacturers in the 80s is being faced by enterprises today. It's basically an existential issue because the competition is globalized, right? And forget about local competition in China, in India, and other countries. They are delivering IT products faster with lower defects, sometimes even 10, sometimes even 20 times a day. And you forget about Facebook and all, who are deploying hundreds of times a day. There are normal companies, enterprise software companies, SaaS companies that are deploying dozens of times a day. And they're able to respond to customer fixes quickly. Security outages that would roll on for weeks now, can be fixed even before a customer might notice. So as a result, if that is objective, and if IT is going to be benchmarked against peers like these who are responding to business requirements with their hours, then everything really has to change.
Well, so Cash, what are some of the ways to get some quick wins during this progression?
So to me, I mean, there are some quick wins which are obvious. I would say at least, automated testing. I think Bobby alluded to automation. I think automation in general is helpful across the board. Automated testing so that, if a change is being introduced into the system, how do we have that peace of mind, or how do we have that some proof? I mean, no one knows for sure, but how do we have proof that work as expected? That means having similar environments in production and QA, having automated testing that runs before anything gets deployed, creating what is called a continuous integration or continuous delivery pipeline, so that somebody's writing code that can automatically be tested, that can automatically be put into the staging environment, can be automatically smoke tested again. Maybe some more staging gets done, and then finally gets rolled out to production. All in theory automated with some git checks. And for low risk releases, just automating and enabling it, right? Just not requiring large meetings for that. And then having IT operations embedded within development, the design stage, and fostering open communication and collaboration between them. I think that's a critical, that's a quick win, and that's a very critical impact. Nowadays, you see some titles being recruited, some roles being recruited in IT for DevOps engineer or stuff like that. And a lot of that is really IT recognizing that they want to be embedded within development, or you want development and to collaborate at the front, and that's where these engineers help out. And then also building shared infrastructure and user monitoring, such as synthetics is an approach where IT can figure out even before users can that something is down. Like if somebody's using your product from Florida versus California versus perhaps in China or Australia, that's a technology that allows you to quickly see that the performance is not what should be before even the users notice. So these are some quick wins, but beyond the quick wins, I really want to say that the shift to a DevOps mindset really starts with self-belief, and that despite the daily crunch of outages, of out of control backlogs, nonstop urgent business requirements, the self-belief that there is a better way, that it works, and other companies have done it. And if a change is not made to the current way of doing things, it's a matter of time before the world passes us by. And once that sense of urgency is there, the self-belief is there, then IT can start looking at how they deliver the value from business requirements all the way to production code and operating in production. And that's where they can start saying, where can I reduce work? Where can I automate? Where can I reduce unnecessary gatekeeping? And the objective would be to create a fast-moving pipeline of product building from every IT organization. Maybe some folks, some participants in this webinar are using ITIL, they're using some other framework, and all that is good. But the important thing is really to have that value creation stream mapped out and understood across both IT and dev, and then systematically working on reducing time of that value stream using some of the quick wins I mentioned above, like automated testing, having a CI/CD pipeline, automated low-risk releases, having embeddable collaborative teams up front.
So, and a lot of what you're talking about there, Rich, did I jump over you?
I was just going to say, I've spoken. Let me have Bobby jump in.
You're fine. Go ahead.
Cash, you're talking about a lot of tools there. It seems like really to move into DevOps that they need tools that are going to support the processes in a way where their business units are no longer working in silos, because that's really what's driving the problems that DevOps is solving, because Dev and Ops are working in silos separate from each other, and tools that are able to bring those two groups together, driving communication within holistic views. And then their processes. What about their processes as well? Is that something that may need adjusting?
Right. And again, I just want to reiterate that there is no set answer here. Every organization, because part of it is, it depends on the industry. If you're in the financial industry, if you're in the pharma industry, as versus you're saying the mining industry, there are your IT responsibilities, your ability to respond quickly may be different. In the case, let's say if you have security requirements, you may today have some sort of process where you're masking data between development and operations when that handoff occurs. Maybe that's something that can be done ahead of time as part of the code design. That automatically, if something is marked as sensitive, then automatically code masks the data before it even makes it out to as part of a containerized build. So those are the kind of things you can really have to adapt, kind of looking at your own business world, how your competition is responding, and then ask yourself, if I want to be able to deploy things to my customers 10, 20, 100 times a day, if need be, how quickly can I do it? What are the processes I need to optimize? What do I need to automate? And what the world has done, kind of the tools world, the tooling world, the world I come from, the product I come from, what we've done is we've tried to give you the tools that can help you do that. I mentioned synthetics before. There are other technologies out there which you can leverage, but ultimately, from a DevOps point of view, the IT is the owner who has to decide that what makes sense for them, and we can only suggest some things here.
Okay, so that poses the question, is it possible for an IT organization to be service-centric without adopting a DevOps culture? And it might help our audience out if we actually define what it is to be service-centric.
So let me jump in on that one, Cash. So to me, service-centric is really about relationships within your environment. And what I mean by that is relationships are going to determine impact. So it's not just enough to know that this server over there has a hard drive problem. You really need to know what depends on that server, and not just what depends on that server, what business service is impacted. How is that going to affect the bottom line of your organization? So it's about the relationships of that service, but also about the business drivers behind that service. You need to know which ones are going to impact your bottom line. Maybe you're doing service level agreements, and you've got that for a server, but unless you understand which systems that server directly impacts, it's going to be difficult to deliver IT to your customers in a way that they're going to expect it.
That's a point, Bobby. I just want to say that a couple of things. One is that the world of DevOps, in theory, if I in practice, at least in theory, measures results by business success. It's not just about simply throwing code into production. It's actually, did we achieve business success? So if you're monitoring what your end users are seeing in terms of performance and defects, and you can quickly roll out fixes within hours, and that is the true measure of service centricity. SLAs, SLOs, all these things are in service of that real objective. But at the end of the day, it's really about agility. The point you made about service maps and business services and so on, that actually is, I think, a critical contribution that IT infrastructure IT infrastructure operations can make to the developers, because at least my impression is, coming from the developer world myself, developers think in terms of code, in terms of applications, in terms of services. They don't think in terms of business services. And as a result, if today a lot of developers are putting things in production themselves, perhaps, they are not really set up to think in terms of, am I giving a quality of service? Am I considering which users are going to be impacted? Am I prioritizing certain types of users over others? For example, if there's an accounting run at the end of the quarter, I want to make sure that they have the best I have the best resources available for those folks. So these are the kind of things that developers don't have that, but IT operations has been trained to do that. And this is where the opportunity is there for collaboration and saying we can both help each other. So I think an IT organization, I think a development organization cannot even adopt DevOps without IT infrastructure, and both cannot be service-centric without each other as well.
Great point.
So, should an enterprise have a DevOps operation as well as an ITOps operation? What would you say are the best practices here?
Let me take that one. I definitely don't think DevOps is an organization, and I think the jury is quite out on what works and what DevOps means for different enterprises and different industries. So I think that was the point I was making earlier, that and maybe we should think in terms of enterprise maturity. In a startup, development, IT, ops, it's just one small team, if individual. I mean, in my previous life, that's what I was the co-founder of. I was a chief product officer of a small company. So everything was one, and you are forced to update code multiple times a day in production without necessarily going through gated control processes. So as a result, you're forced to write code that is automatically deployable and that operates in production, right? So startups, they were forced to adopt these operational best practices from the design stage. Enterprises, it cannot be like that. It cannot be that laissez-faire. So I think thought leaders in IT really have to take they have to take DevOps principles such as cycle time reduction, reduce wasted time, and automation, and apply to themselves. So to me, there's no such thing as a DevOps organization. There is a DevOps culture, and I think IT has to take a leadership role along with developers in inculcating that culture across the whole company.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I was going to say the same thing, that DevOps really is not it's not an organization or a business unit. It's actually a culture. It's really the communication between ops and dev, so that you've got stability within your change, because that stability is going to allow you to reduce risk associated with that change. But both dev and IT ops are going to need people, tools, and processes to be able to deliver that. And both have to move toward automation, because automation is the only way they're going to be able to deliver change with expectations being properly set around that change and stability around that change as well.
Gentlemen, this has been a great discussion today, and it looks like we've gotten all the questions answered that we needed. Folks, if you have any additional questions, by all means, go ahead and type them into the Q&A section of this WebEx. And while we have Bobby and Nash here, let's keep the discussion going. If not, that's a great shift taking place right out there today, and these are things that we need to be mindful of. And folks, if you have questions in regards to this that maybe you don't want to ask now, reach out to us at 844-FLYCAST. That's 844-359-2278. We'd be happy to have the discussion with you. You can chat with one of our IT experts on our website Monday through Friday during normal business hours, or email us at info@flycastpartners.com. Cash and Bobby, thank you for your time today. Great discussion.
It was a great opportunity.
Thank you, Rich.
Very good. I know I learned a great deal from this. I don't know about the audience, but I learned quite a bit. So I definitely want to thank you about on this, because the more we seem to dig in and go down that road, some of this stuff can be a little confusing to most. And I like the way you broke it down, and I really appreciate it. With that being said, audience, I'm going to thank you for joining us today, and look forward to seeing you on our next webinar or podcast right around the corner. And enjoy your weekend, folks. Thank you.